Hi, it's Ann from the Lowdown on Cancer, and we've been diving deeper into the Cancer Fund. And we can't really do that without introducing you to the person who is behind the Cancer Fund, Anthony Bajoras. Anthony, thank you for joining us today. And would you mind sharing a little bit of your background before you started the Cancer Fund?
Sure. I've spent most of my life as an entrepreneur, building early stage technology companies mostly. Spent the past 10 years working more on what I would characterize as health innovations and health innovation projects, working with those companies. And I've also been an angel investor for about 20 years.
What made you start the Cancer Fund? I can't imagine it's just something where you go one day, hey, I'm just going to do something different.
Well, it sort of was one day, 15 years in the making or so, right? I would say it was a progression of events that started almost 20 years ago, about 17 years ago. One of the earliest investments I saw was actually a cancer therapy, and it's not something that I was looking for at the time, and nor had my life been touched in a really meaningful way by cancer, so it didn't really hit me the same way. But what I did sort of recognize at the time was it was eye-opening in the sense that here was an early stage therapy which was having, at least from some of the clinical trials, really profound potential, at least, right? And to me, it was sort of mind-boggling that they were unable to find funding. And after my first meeting with the doctor, the founder of the company, I went home and looked at, did a few minutes of research on the internet to see, how much money was actually raised on an annual basis for cancer charities. Thinking that, well, I mean, there are literally billions of dollars donated to these charities every year, and billions of dollars in federal funding to the National Cancer Institute. How is it that a company like this, a therapy like this, is unable to get funded? And so, that really, it really changed my perspective. But it wasn't. While it shifted my perspective, it didn't change my action or anything I was doing until really almost 15 years later.
And how did that change?
So probably about 5 years after that first meeting, my father, who came to the meeting with me, was diagnosed with cancer. Sorry, can you give me a minute?
Yep.
So about 5 years after that first meeting, my father had come to that meeting with me, but about 5 years after that, he was diagnosed with cancer. And about 5 years from that point, he had passed away. And certainly that experience played an important role in starting this. It affects people differently, right, in different ways. But for me, it was an absolute feeling of helplessness. So it affects all of us in different ways, but for me, it was really that feeling of helplessness. And in fact, I tried to do things to help throughout my dad's therapy, though, my mom and my brother, my sister, I think really did far more than I did. And so that certainly had something to do with it going through that experience. But, I think for most of us, we all expect our parents to pass away before we do, right? So, while you may never be prepared for it, you don't, it's not entirely unexpected in that regard. For my dad, he was only 61, right? So he was pretty young. Definitely what you would consider premature. For that, and actually not even much older than me, than I am right now when he was first diagnosed. And this was really certainly part of it. I think that this actually has more to do with it, because obviously there's nothing I can do to change the outcome for him. But now I'm at that age where I'm having friends and family members always, right? But friends my age, people that I grew up with, some of which are even a little younger than me, that are not only being diagnosed with cancer, but even passing away from it, right? And I know it's not like there hasn't been any progress, right, over the past decades, but clearly, like there are still a number of challenges, and clearly people we care about are still, succumbing to the disease and dying, right? So. So I'm certainly experiencing that, right? And then, being a father of two kids who are what now, 10 and 7. You think about the pace of the progress, right? And I think we all probably have that moment where we turn into these amateur actuaries, right? And you sort of look around the room and you start calculating the probabilities of everyone in the room being diagnosed with cancer or a specific type of cancer and their probability of surviving, right? And that's just kind of what happens the more familiar you become with the disease. And then how those odds increase when when you have a family history and all these other factors, right? And so I would say that really, while my dad's experience had something to do with it, I think it's more, it's really more about trying to create a better future for, for my friends, who knows, myself, right? Like, don't know what the future holds, right? And absolutely for my children and their friends and their family, right? So that they hopefully have more options, better options, better outcomes by the time they're confronted with this.
What actually is the Cancer Fund, in your words?
In my words,
Yeah.
it's a mission-driven, for-profit investment fund.
Say more about that. What exactly is the Cancer Fund? What does it do?
So, I think we've borrowed elements from different things, right? So certainly the mission that we have is very similar in many ways to many of the cancer charities, right? We really want to make a difference in cancer. I think our strategies for doing that are a bit different. Our strategy is really to do it through innovation, right? There have literally been decades and hundreds of billions of dollars of research. And we believe that if we can help those innovations actually get out of the lab and into the real world, they can actually help patients. So that's really our strategy. There's sometimes some skepticism around the charities, right? Around just charities in general. I'm not singling out cancer charities, right? I think this is, and I'll be the first to admit that the charities do a lot of great things. Whether or not they're doing exactly what we thought they were doing as donors, or that we think they're doing, is sort of another story. But I think there's also always a bit of skepticism of what is the end goal, right? What's the end game? How does it work, right? Like, is there actually an incentive and alignment to actually come up with cures for these diseases? And for the most part, I think everybody that's involved in them is not, is rarely doing it for the money, right? They're certainly there for the mission. But, you start to build these massive organizations around that mission, and then sometimes it becomes more about sustaining the organization than it does actually achieving its purpose.
What makes Cancer Fund so different than anything else out there that I could write a check to?
Well, I would say, as far as I'm aware, I think that we are, as far as I know, we are the earliest or the only early stage investment fund supporting cancer innovation, right? So I don't think there's anything else out there like this to support what we're working on, right? And not only are we transparent with what we do, we involve the community in the process if they want to be involved. We don't want to force people, but we certainly welcome that participation. And so, beyond just making an investment and having insight into what it's actually doing, for those that want deeper involvement, there are other ways to get more deeply involved in identifying the prospective innovations and companies that we support and helping them as they go through their development and launch process.
So I write a check for $2,500 to a charity. For me, that money's basically gone, and there's no way really to pick up a phone and find out where the rest of the money went. How is that different with the Cancer Fund?
Sure. So, when you invest in the Cancer Fund, you become one of our limited partners, right? Basically, like a shareholder. So you'll have insight in our annual report as to if you're not participating all along the way, right? And following what we share, even before we make the investments and when we make the investments, you'd at least have in the annual report an understanding of where we invested. Right, and how we invested the fund's capital, and prior to that, you can actually see how we actually have a plan of how we expect to invest it before that. So yeah, there is that kind of insight and that kind of reporting, which I think is very different than what's available to most donors or to any donors. I guess if you're a large enough donor, maybe you can get that kind of insider reporting, but I think most donors don't get that. And then certainly that comes along with some differences in benefit, right? There's a difference between financially, there's a difference between being a donor and being an investor.
And what are some of those differences?
Well, again, going back to what we're trying to balance here, which is impact and return on investment. If it's possible that some of the companies that we invest in support could end up becoming very successful, right? And the ownership that the fund has in those companies could be quite valuable, and that's the potential, right? As a part owner of the fund, you would potentially participate in that upside, right? And that return, and that's different, right? Because like you said, when you if you make a donation to a charity, that's it. That's the end. Not only from an insight perspective, but from a financial transaction perspective. And for us, it's really just the beginning, right? Once you make the investment, that becomes part of our capital pool that gets invested, and hopefully not only do the portfolio of companies that we end up investing in end up making a big difference in the world, but if they do create that substantial value, then it's possible that you could get capital in return. It could be some portion of the amount you initially invested. It could be quite a bit higher than that.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us that maybe I haven't asked?
Yeah, it would be really great if what's been so exciting about what we've been doing is to see sort of the light go on for people, right? To me, it's really exciting to have a conversation with someone and see that shift, right, that I experienced like 15, 17 years ago, right? And then even more exciting is to be able to share something with them and say, here's something you can do about that, right? Because for me, there were several reasons why it took so long to actually sort of turn that realization into action. And the short story is that, like, in order to do that, I had to actually create the cancer fund, right? I think what we've created here is a simple way to support cancer innovation and make a difference in a different way, but in a very impactful way. And I think that we've taken something that's really complex and made it a lot faster, easier, and more inclusive. We're working to make it more inclusive so that everyone can participate in it. And that wasn't something that was available to me when I had sort of gone through this experience. So to me, it's really exciting not only to see that shift in realization, but to be able to introduce people to the Cancer Fund, and then for them to get excited about our vision, our strategy, our unique approach to how we do this, and then to want to become part of it. For me, that is, it's exciting to see, and it's also necessary because, my reluctance to do this was, you can probably imagine what an intimidating sort of mountain this looked like trying to move, right? Like at the beginning of this, and starting out sort of, independently with that sort of vision and passion, and knowing that this was going to be a massive mountain to move, right? And knowing that I wouldn't be able to do it alone, and not necessarily knowing who would show up to help. And I really think that if I could ask others for something, it would really be to, if there's any sort of familiarity and sort of the thoughts that I've shared, right? That experience of that I've gone through in terms of looking for a way to have a greater impact, right? Than or maybe doing something in addition to supporting certain charities, right? If they're looking for something different, like I hope that they'll actually join and become part of what we're doing, because this will take it will take more. It will take more than the people we have right now, even though we have a great start. I feel like the bigger our investor community gets, the greater the impact we can have, and the more immediate impact we can have. So that's the kind of the last thing I'd like to share is really ask people to get involved one way or another.
So if somebody was interested in investing in the Cancer Fund right this second, how would they do that?
Easy. Go to cancerfund.com cancerfund.com/invest. Or just give us a call or email invest@cancerfund.com. It's pretty fast, pretty easy. We can actually get through the process in about 15 to 20 minutes. We can even handle most of it. Actually, we can actually handle all of it online. It just, I think part of it is just making sure that it's a good fit for both of us, right? We certainly want, again, going to the idea of this being a community fund here, right? Like, we're not just looking for investors. We're looking for people that are like-minded, right? And share the mission, and also understand the risk, right, of what we're doing. And so usually that's a conversation with me at this point, and making just sure that we're on the same page. And then in terms of the transaction process, it's fairly straightforward.